First things first, today we honor Martin Luther King Jr., a man who sacrificed himself on the altar of freedom for and equality for all Americans. Now, what you're seeing here are suggestions as to how to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Call your senators and tell them to pass the Vote the Right Act, the Freedom to Vote Act, and the John Lewis Voting Rights Amendment Act. 2. Go to this website and sign on the Move On petition to protect our fundamental rights that he fought and died to achieve. Go on Twitter, follow official MLK3, that's his grandson, to stay up to date for the latest updates on Congress and ways to take action. And 4, visit MLKDayActions.org and find an MLK event in your area or to how to host your own. Now, I really don't want to talk about this, but we need to, because obviously this whole thing is linked up with what's happening now. This is from Heather Cox Richardson. While all eyes today are on the fight of the newly combined voting rights bill before the Senate, it's now the Freedom to Vote John R. Lewis Act. There are plenty of new sources out there right now that are made clear what's at stake if the Republicans are permitted to rig the rules so they will win the next elections. The Department of Justice acknowledged that there was seditious conspiracy behind the January 6th insurrection against our government. The Justice Department indicted the Oath Keepers leader, Elmer Stewart Reynolds III, and 10 other members of the Oath Keepers. Now, we already know who they are, a far-right anti-government militia that specializes in recruiting veterans for a number of crimes, including the seditious conspiracy in relation to the January 6th insurrection. Sedition is the crime of inciting revolt against the government. And these men allegedly established training sessions in areas for staging equipment all around Washington, D.C. before the insurrection to support an attack on that day. They also brought knives, tactical vests, radio equipment, and so on to the Capitol on January 6. Rhodes stated that should Biden assume the office of the presidency, quoting him, "We will have to do a massively bloody revolution against them. That is what's going to happen," unquote. He wanted Trump to use the military to stop the transfer of presidential power. On Christmas Day, he messaged his co-conspirators about the January 6th joint session of Congress, quoting him, "We need to make those senators very uncomfortable, with all of us being a few hundred feet away. I think Congress will screw him being Trump, over. The only chance we, or he, again meaning Trump, the only chance that he will have is if we scare the shit out of them and convince them that it will be torches and pitchforks time if they don't do the right thing. But I don't think they'll listen," unquote. On December 31st, he wrote, and I quote again, "There is no standard or political or legal way out of this," unquote. Officials produced a lot of evidence from encrypted messaging channels suggesting they have access to encrypted messages to support their argument that the conspirators intend to overthrow the government. Quoting, "You ain't seen nothing yet," one messaged another, and, quoting again, "We aren't quitting, we're reloading," unquote. They plotted going to Washington, D.C., getting hotel rooms, and stashing weapons, and then continued to communicate as they stormed the Capitol, evidently seeing themselves as the modern-day version of the patriots of the American Revolution, calling to mind Representative Lauren Boebert's tweet the morning of January 6 that today is 1776. After the insurrection, the conspirators continued to stockpile weapons and prepare for next steps. On January 20th, the day of Biden's inauguration, one message after another, quoting, "After this, if nothing happens, it's Civil War 2.0." The Oath Keepers provided security to Trump loyalist Roger Stone on January the 5th and 6th. Stone had denied any involvement with the insurrection. Tess Owen of Vice reports that on January 5th about a similar right-wing gang active at the Capitol. Owen said that after the January 6th insurrection, for which nearly 50 members of their gang had been charged, the neo-fascist street-fighting gang, the Proud Boys, turned from their national stage to a local right-wing culture wars. From January 6th to December 21st, 2021, the Proud Boys appeared in uniform at least 114 times in 73 cities and 24 states, working to amend among local activities opposing critical race theory and vaccine mandates in order to expand their base of support. The Proud Boys are the gang Trump told to stand back and stand by.
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by, but I'll tell you.
When reporter Chris Wallace of Fox News asked him to condemn white supremacists. It wasn't just members of the street gang who were involved in overturning the 2020 election. Last week, a news website called Insurrection Index, published by the voting rights organization PublicWise, established that more than 1,000 people in elective office or portions of public trust around the country either spread the big lie that the 2020 election was fraudulent or participated in the January 6th insurrection. Over the past several days, news has broken that lawmakers or partisan officials in various states forged documents claiming that Trump won the 2020 election. This linked them directly to the insurrection. As conservative editor Bill Kristol of the Bulwark notes, false electoral counts were part of Trump's plan to get then Vice President Mike Pence to refuse to count numbers of Biden's electoral votes on the grounds that the states had sent in conflicting ballots. Interestingly, on December 17, 2021, White House Press Secretary Kathleen McEnany told Fox News, whose personality Sean Hannity, that in 4 states there was an alternate state of electors voted upon that Congress will decide in January. McEnany also talked to the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6 attack on the U.S. yesterday. The January 6 committee also asked House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy to testify. He promptly refused, saying the committee is illegitimate. A court, unfortunately for McCarthy, said it was legitimate. The committee's 6-page letter requesting McCarthy's voluntary cooperation made that clear that he has a lot of information. In an interview with Greg Cernak of the Washington Post, New York University School of Law professor Ryan Goldman suggested that McCarthy might be able to shed light on whether or not Trump believed that the rioters were helping his effort to overturn the election. Lawmakers who talked to McCarthy in January about his explosive-laden conversation with Trump as McCarthy tried to get him to call off the rioters reported that Trump's answer to McCarthy was, quoting, "Well, Kevin, I guess these people are more upset about the election than you are," unquote. Surgeon's article suggested that, among other things, the committee wants to know if Trump tried to make a deal with McCarthy or others, indicating they would call off the rioters if the Republicans either overturned the election results or delayed the count. House Republicans have already begun to map out how they will retake the government, planning to investigate the Biden administration aggressively if they win control of the House in 2022, trying to stoke the culture wars before the 2024 election. Senator Ted Cruz said on a podcast that if the Republicans might as well impeach Biden if they take the House in 2022, whether justified or not. Those are his words. He claimed that the Democrats had, quoting him, used impeachment for partisan purposes to go after Trump because they disagreed with them, and there would be enormous pressure on the Republican House to do the same. Democrats impeached Trump, of course, not over policy differences, but over two extraordinary acts. The first was Trump's 2019 attempt to strong-arm the Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky, I'm sorry, I don't know if I said that name right, into smearing Trump's leading challenger for the presidency, withholding congressional-approved money from Ukraine's defense against Russia until Zelensky would agree to tell the media that he was launching an investigation into Biden's son. It would be ironic if the Republicans acquitted Trump of just such quid pro quo with Ukraine and President Zelensky, only to have him suggest a similar quid pro quo to save their own lives. The second was inciting the January 6th insurrection. And yet, despite all this, the Republican Party is lining up behind Trump's wishes. The Republican National Committee announced that it plans to change the rules, refusing to permit any of its candidates to participate in debates run by nonpartisan Commission of Presidential Debates. The commission was founded by the Republicans and Democrats in 1987 to make formal debates part of the election process. It is actually supposed to arrange the debates with candidates, not party officials. Debates are not Trump's strong suit, and he insists that the commission is biased against them. Not too long ago, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has adjourned the Senate out of concerns about COVID and an upcoming storm. It will reconvene on Tuesday to debate voting rights. Right now, the Republican Party is trying to undo the gains of voting rights in this country, not for the sake of national security, not for the sake of expediency, but for the sake of one man. Martin Luther King and so many others sacrificed their lives for this great cause. Do not let the Republican Party, who is now beholden to one man, not to country, not to the Constitution, not even to God himself, but to one man. Do not let them destroy our democracy and thereby destroying our nation. CTP, know the truth. God bless. Peace to the left, justice to the right.